2 bid advertisement for water improvement project.
Ben.
Yeah, you bet. So, just to preface this a little bit, we had a meeting in early December with the Navy on the DCIP funds, which have been awarded, and we're currently coordinating with them on the last steps to get this project to bid and ultimately constructed. So I did send over a schedule that's, I'd say it's a rough schedule to get this to bid as soon as possible. One thing I would like to add is, you know, this is pretty rare funding, right? This isn't like SRF funds with DEQ that we deal with every single day. So we are working through some of the hurdles to get this across the finish line for you. Some of the things that we're coordinating now include the NEPA environmental. We can go to bid without the NEPA environmental, but we have to have that approved by the Navy before we can do any construction. There are some changes that need to be made to the contract documents to include the DCIP grant requirements, specifically Buy America provisions, and then some of their other administrative things. We want to make sure that that doesn't trigger a DEQ re-review of the plans and specs. So we've been in contact with DEQ to make sure we can still bid with the same plans and specs, but with incorporating those special requirements from the Navy. So right now we're hoping to get closure on some of those items next week. I think we're looking to get the board's approval to go out for bid on this project when ready. I also have a few questions just on how we want to proceed with that particular funding. Now the district has two separate funding packages for this project. So you have your SRF and grant funding through DEQ, and now you have this DCIP funding. And there is a portion of that contract that's set aside for administration and inspection. And does the district want to perform, and specifically want Keller to perform, the contract administration, bidding, you know, the tasks that I've just kind of described, getting this across the finish line, getting it bid, and then doing the on-site inspections a couple days a week through the tank construction, through final payment, as part of the DCIP grant dollars, rather than using your SRF loan money? Or do you want to keep the contract as is? Because some of this do you see where I'm going with that? I think there's advantages probably to using the DCIP funds for that because it's grant money, but we would just need to make sure to keep that in mind and amend our contract accordingly. And I have confirmed with Tim at the Navy that we can do that. We just can't get reimbursed until a contractor is on board who has a performance bond. So anyway, there's a couple irons in the fire right now, and like I said, we're just working to track these hurdles and get this across the finish line, get it to bid as soon as we can.
Love to see it go through the Navy funds, right? Because the other funds are partly ours. Is that correct? Or would it all be coming out of the SRF loan? So it's
DCIP.
Eventually our money, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the bigger question too is like, how does this impact everything with DEQ? Originally, you were, you know, headed down the road of using grant and DEQ funds for this work, and do we need to involve them in this conversation, saying, you know, that the district was awarded a grant and we're, you know, you're going to be paying for it out of the Navy funds, and if there's any overruns or other associated costs with it, then perhaps that would come out of the SRF DEQ pot of money. And then that would also mean that when Keller is assisting you with phase 2 of the project, we would be billing to the DCIP funds. There's about $68,000 set aside for that out of the $900,000 for construction. And then, you know, that would save you money on the DEQ side. That's kind of where we were going with it. I know that's a separate maybe conversation about this going to bid, but I was hoping to get closure on some of these questions, get approval to go to bid. I have a couple other questions too on just where we're making sure that we get everything right in the contract before we go to bid. But anyway, I'll stop talking. I've covered a lot there to digest. So
Thank you, Ben. Well, discussions, review this. I know I'd rather have as much DCIP. I'd like to use all the DCIP and have as little as possible for this second pool come out of SRF, because we're paying back the SRF, and the DCIP is great. So obviously that's a no-brainer. However, Ben, thank you for having the ability to stay on, and I hope you guys can know the fine line for if there's anything IDEQ is going to say, okay, well now that changes things with X, Y, or Z of some sort. I would hope not, but that's a government agency, and they have.
Well, it changes. Yeah, well, it changes their funds too, where they have more money to give to other small communities. So I'd say use the maximum. Maybe we can.
Just because we have 903,000 doesn't mean that we have to spend it all.
But if the Navy's willing to pay for inspection, I just assume that the Navy pays for it.
Yeah.
yeah, I think the cleanest way, and this is ultimately your guys' decision, but how we saw it, once those funds were awarded, let's take care of all the work associated with Farragut Tank out of the DCIP pot of money, however much that ends up costing, and then finish out phase one of the project, which is your booster station, your water lines, your well improvements out of your how we have been out of the DEQ, SRF, and grant funding package.
What is a gut shot as far as what it's going to take to finish that off?
You'll be less money than you thought, because now we're not doing the tank out of the SRF. So I think right now that project's about at 3.4 million forecasted to completion, and in total DEQ and SRF you had over 4 million.
Yeah.
So roughly in the neighborhood of 500,000 to $1 million under budget.
I think our great favors would appreciate that.
Yeah, it's pretty significant.
Should we have a motion?
So if that sounds good, I think, and we can firm up some of the details too later, but I just want to make sure that when we're communicating with DEQ, we're communicating with the Navy, that's the direction that the district wants to go, and I think I have clarity on that. With the contract, like I said, we have to add a few things in. So if there's anything else we want to revise, now is the time to do it before we go to bid. And one question I wanted to run by the board, I think at the last board meeting there was a little bit of discussion around that tank swap. So right now we're planning to swap your tank over to the Navy's, the state parks tank while they do the rehab on the Farragut. And our understanding is that this has been done successfully in the past. I don't know how long ago that was. I think the risk is okay, what if something goes wrong, or what if this doesn't work? And now that we have the funding in place through the DCIP grant, should we include a contingency bid item that introduces competition into the mix, that whether it's a temporary storage option or a temporary VFD option, that if for whatever reason the project runs long or the tank swap is complicated, that you have a bid associated to provide temporary water while you do the rehab. Originally, we did not do that because there was no funding to do it. Like basically you just had to figure this out with a tank swap. So this would be a simple spec revision and just revising the bid table to include a contingency bid item that you could choose to award or not to award during construction based on how things go. It mitigates risk if anything goes wrong with the tank swap. Hopefully you don't have to use it at all. But if we don't put it in there, the risk is if anything goes wrong, then you're facing a more expensive change order because there was no competition introduced into that pricing up front, if that makes sense. So this is just, I'm just trying to do my job and make sure we're minimizing risk to you. This isn't really a large cost for us to put that in. It's more just how much risk are you willing to deal with? Are you confident the tank swap's going to work? Or do you want to maybe have a contingency item in there, and should we address that now?
Wise to me.
And of course, the main issue is timing. Anything after the 31st of May, we're pretty much done.
Just have to keep an eye on whoever gets the contract and hopefully make sure that they stick to it so they don't say, well, we have this extra bit of work we can do it. We kind of drop a wrench here.
Well, so I assume we'll have some pretty stiff penalty days on this one. They need to understand, end of May is the end of May.
A 3 to 5,000 gallon truck where you start to use several 100,000 gallons a day. It's not going to cut it.
It has to happen.
Yeah.
They can't almost get there. There needs to be some significant liquidated damages on this one.
Has anybody sat down with the park and discussed this with them?
Yes, we have. Multiple times. It sounds like this has been done successfully, but at the same time, it's like, does anyone remember or know when? You know, it's like, I think we all have faith that this can be done, but I just want to present an option that if anything goes wrong, that you have a bid for a temporary water storage or something to that effect, or if the project, there's delays that are due to unforeseen circumstances that we don't even know about right now, and you have to run long, that you have an option to use the temporary solution as a contingency item.
When are you trying to get this bid out?
Original schedule, we were shooting for next week. I think that's fairly aggressive. It'll likely fall in the week after that, and we'll be out to bid for a month. Some of it depends on, we're waiting on a few things from the Navy. We have DEQ involved. Like I said, we're working through, these aren't huge hurdles, but just a few things we want to make sure that we don't jump the gun and not include something that's required by the funding, and then we have to do an addendum or something to that effect. But
what do we have to approve to go forward here? Because this is a review and approve phase 2 bid advertising.
typically, we don't put your project out for bid without the owner approval to say, yes, you have our approval. Keller, please go out to bid on this project. That's, I think, what we're asking for. I had some other questions in there. I think we've gone through those, but
we don't have anything to review yet.
Do we have a rundown of the design? What all is included again?
so the
Major bid items, not the little things.
yeah, so this is a tank rehabilitation project. It includes the interior, removal of the interior epoxy coatings that are currently flaking off, and repair of the inside of the tank and sealing of the inside of the tank, crack repair, removal of the exterior coating and recoating of the exterior of the tank, the roof interior and exterior coating, a new ladder all the way to the top of the tank are the major items, and then control valve replacements. Control valve replacements, and then the overflow line is not to IDAPA spec, so it requires modifications to the tank overflow to get you in state compliance.
Do we have any use for 200 feet of 60 casing?
We've got somebody looking at it right now.
Do we?
Go there right now, yes.
Yeah, we've been sending around some emails. Well, Bob's been sending around some emails today.
Comments. Ben will see in the email. He'll be able to comment when he gets done with the meeting. We've got some more inquiries today.
I'm just curious when we'll be able to see the bid, the proposed bid.
Right now, the schedule for that, Jesse, that I had sent over, we had bids due on January 12th. I would say, let's just be realistic and say by the end of January.
And we're talking about for us to review.
Yeah.
We have the bid.
Oh, you want to see, the bid package was submitted Sure. The bid package was submitted in 2022, so this is middle of 2022. DEQ's approved it. This was sent to the district. I can resend it if you don't have that. If you want to see a final, including the DCIP stuff that's included, we could send that too.
Do you have anything in this to address the contingency plan if we didn't make May 31st?
You mean having the contingency bid item for temporary storage?
Right.
That's not in there currently. We can either do that now and do that before we go to bid, or we can issue it as an addendum during bidding.
I think we should do it before we go to bid. We should pull up whatever was sent to us in 2022, put in what the board is requesting, and then I also, after going through phase one, I'd like to just take a look at the pre-qualifications, if any.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to comment, Ben, that Memorial Day weekend starts the 25th this year.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit early. Well, it's not the 31st. It's got to be by the 25th.
We'll likely have a milestone placed in the contract days, that the general conditions that requires the tank to come back online at that date, but the contractor can still work on exterior things like ladders, doors, the overflow line, some of those things that can be worked on while the tank's active, but that the actual rehab
can wait. The outside paint job can wait until July.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. But the actual interior coatings and all that, then we can swap it back on the tank and then they can continue to work. Exactly right. Jesse, do I need to resend the bid docs for the board to review? Are you comfortable, at least in this meeting? I think we're hoping to, get approval to bid, or do you want to do another meeting, or what are your thoughts?
So we need a proposal, I think.
Well, I think we can proceed with the bidding process.
And maybe just make it contingent on us providing the final documents and you providing verbal approval of those before we actually go out for advertisement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want a motion? I'll try to make a motion. Nothing out here. I make a motion to direct Keller to proceed to bid pending the board's final approval of the final design, or bid documents rather.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
And you already have enough direction on using the Navy funds, the DCIP versus the SRF. You don't need anything additional there, right?
Yeah, I think so. If you're okay with it, we will amend our contract so that phase 2 will add a task for